For those of you who don't know me, hello, welcome. Today we're going to go into two lives. One of them is deeper dives, which are, stop asking for permission and where it actually starts. And the second one is more practical. It's called When You Stop Explaining Yourself, Everything Changes. So if you are a person who feels like you've had to ask permission most of your life, for various reasons, maybe you had a caregiver who encouraged you to essentially not have needs, to do as you were told, and to follow the rules and be self-sufficient. This can feel like an obstacle that is difficult to overcome, right? Because a lot of us, old habits die hard, as they say, and a lot of these things are actually coping mechanisms that we've used to survive, to keep ourselves safe. For instance, asking for permission or over-explaining or overthinking. We felt like if we could map things out in our heads, that then we would be prepared for the outcome. Unfortunately, not everything that we map out comes to fruition, right? And so we have to be cautious, and we have to be willing to know that some things aren't going to work out as we hoped, right? Good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to say. And I think a lot of people believe that if they stopped asking, believe that they've stopped asking for permission because they're not saying it out loud anymore. But if you really look at your behavior, it's still there. And so most of us didn't decide to become people pleasers. We became people pleasers because we thought that that would keep us safe. Rightly or wrongly, that was the intention. That's why that happened. And ultimately, does people pleasing keep you safe? Not really. I mean, it may make certain people be nicer to you, or it may make people not be as conflict driven. But ultimately, it's another thing that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And ultimately, we adapted. We learned what worked. We learned what kept things calm, and those are the things that we did. Welcome, guys. My name is Buffy, and today we're going into two lives. One is, welcome, Ella G70. We're going into two lives today, deeper dives. One is stop asking for permission and where it actually starts. And the other one is when you stop explaining, everything changes. Okay? I think a lot of people believe they stopped asking for permission because they're not saying it out loud anymore. But if you really look at your behavior, it's still there. Hi, Leah. My name's Buffy. Nice to meet you. Hi, Leah. And so, yeah, we're doing those two today. But if you really look at your behavior, it's still there, right? Hi, Leah. So most of us didn't decide to become people pleasers. Nice to meet you too as well, Leah. Welcome. So this is from my one podcast, Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress, which is housed on YouTube. And so most of us didn't decide to be people pleasers. Thank you for the like. No, I'm a terrible singer. Terrible singer, Leah, I promise you. Your ears will bleed. We learned what worked, and we learned what kept things calm. And so for some of you, that meant being the easy one, the good one, the one who didn't make things harder. You weren't low maintenance. You were adapting, and you were adapting to keep yourself safe. Were you the one who tried to keep things smooth growing up? Or were you the one who was the good one, right? The one who kept people together, the peacemaker? At some point, your brain connected approval with safety. And generally, that's because safety meant if you kept your caregiver calm, if you kept other people around you calm and satisfied, bad things stayed at bay. Anger stayed at bay. Conflict stayed at bay. Probably to this day, you're still conflict averse. I know that I am, because I had a caregiver who was often unpredictable and mistook a lot of what I said. And I know many of you likely experienced that as well. And so at some point you realized that if people are okay, you're okay. If people are upset, something's wrong. And I think a lot of us grow up to be empathetic people who read the rooms quickly. And we don't tolerate discomfort. We don't tolerate fakeness. A lot of us get upset when others are wrong. For the longest time, I was actually enmeshed with my caregiver. When they would get upset, I would get upset. It took a lot of work to get out of that situation because it was very uncomfortable and I would almost become hysterical. So if you've had that scenario, you know how difficult it can be, right? And so you learn to check before you spoke, soften before you disagreed, explain before you said no, because oftentimes no was a dirty word in that house. No meant you weren't listening, you weren't doing what they wanted you to do. And a lot of people really like the control. That's what they want. Welcome, Fries, Sunny, Haggers. It's really hard because it's literally like this big. So I apologize if I butchered it. Hello, welcome. And so all of those things are explained before you said no, right? And so that is something that you still do to this day. You edit yourself. You watch for reactions. You don't want to be disagreeable. You don't want to be mean. You don't want to have boundaries because boundaries keep people out. But guess what? Boundaries also keep you safe. Boundaries keep you safe. Welcome, Mr. Indiana. Hacker God. So how it shows up now. Just say no. You don't explain why. You explain why, right? You replay conversations after they happen, ad nauseum, right? Over and over and over and over. I should have said this. I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I said this. I couldn't have said that. And you call it being thoughtful, but underneath it is a question. Was that okay? Was that okay? Right? And you don't have to worry about that. As long as you're not being nasty to people, as long as you're not hurting people, as long as you're asking questions and living your life, you know, that's the thing, right? And so do you notice doing this more with certain people? I know I do. Certain people, especially people who tend to ask a lot of questions, who want certain answers, because, you know, when you're a child, oftentimes they try to lead you to a certain response. And if they don't like that response, then they often come up with the idea of, you know, let's see, can you make this better? Can you say this differently? Are you sure you feel that way? And let's talk about the identity shift. The hardest part isn't stopping the behavior. It's realizing how much of your identity is built around it. Who are you if you're not the one who keeps everything together? So in the next slide, I want to talk about what actually happens when you stop explaining, because that's where it gets uncomfortable. And discomfort and uncomfortable is hard, right? So when you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. If you've ever tried to stop over-explaining, you already know this doesn't feel natural at first. It feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. It feels like you're avoiding connection, but you're not. So people will notice, right? They will question you. They will push back against you. They will feel the shift. And that shift will make them uncomfortable. That will make them frustrated. That will make them confused. And they want the old version of you. But you are starting to realize that that old version of you hasn't served you, that you have boundaries that you have to keep, that you deserve to keep your boundaries. Boundaries, a lot of people think are mean or nasty or make people think that they don't like them, but they are there to protect you, right? And you're going to feel it, not because you're wrong, but because they're used to a version of you that explained everything. People don't struggle with your boundary. They struggle with losing access to the version of you that didn't have one. What's one situation where you know you over-explain? Think about that and try to maybe work on that one, hit that one the hardest. Let's talk about the internal discomfort, because the internal discomfort is real. It's very real. This is the part most people don't talk about. The guilt, the second guessing, the urge to go back and fix it. Your brain thinks something is wrong, but really something is just different. Different doesn't mean wrong, right? So here's what to actually do. Actionable tips and strategies. Pause before explaining. Let your first answer stand, even if it feels incomplete. And it's going to feel incomplete because you're used to explaining more. 2, shorten your language. I can't do that today. No follow-up explanation. 3, sit in silence. You don't have to fill every gap. 4, let people have reactions. They're going to have reactions, but that has nothing to do with you, right? What would it look like for you to say less in one situation this week? Want to try it out? Definitely welcome you to. So in closing, you don't need permission. You need practice trusting yourself without it, because self-trust is so important. And people-pleasing and overthinking were coping mechanisms that oftentimes don't work. They don't end well. They don't help us. They make us more and more anxious and nervous and trying to follow a script. But ultimately, we know what we need to do. We know who we are. We don't have to ask for permission from anyone, right? We are our own people. We know how we want to live our lives, and we need to live it joyously, unapologetically, lovingly. Treat yourself well and take care of your inner critic, because your inner critic is sometimes your worst enemy at times. You know what I mean? So you got this. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for tuning in. Welcome, Jody. I missed that. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And I hope that you'll come back and see me again soon. If you got value, feel free to like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it, and or even follow. So thank you so much, guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. I'll probably go back on tomorrow. So talk to you soon. Bye-bye.